Assalamu alaikum. In these slides, we will discuss chapter number 13 and 14, which deals with a very important topic of capacity and level of service for uninterrupted flow facilities. So let us start. Now we have already discussed what we mean by uninterrupted flow facilities. These are the highways or roads which will not have any interruptions, and these interruptions can be in the form of uh, any type of intersection, whether it has a signal or a stop sign or a yield sign or a roundabout. All of them are interruptions. Now to find these highways would be very rare, so we have another restriction on uninterrupted flow facilities, that if the interruption, any of these interruptions, is more than 2 miles apart from each other, then that is an uninterrupted flow facilities. So even if you have interruptions but these are far from each other, still you can call that highway as an uninterrupted flow facility. Now the types of uninterrupted flow facilities discussed in this chapter will be freeways, which are completely uninterrupted, so we call them pure uninterrupted flow facilities as well. Then we have multi-lane highways. These are highways which have interruptions, but these interruptions are more than 2 miles from each other, and they are multi-lanes. So that means they have more than 2 lanes in each direction, or 2 lanes or more than 2 lanes in each direction. And then we have rural 2-lane highways. So these are in rural areas, and they have 2 lanes, and they are uninterrupted. So the interruptions are more than 2 miles from each other. The procedure which we will follow for finding out the level of service or capacity of these highways is taken from Highway Capacity Manual, and it is published by USA. So it is their standard for finding out capacity and level of service. It is published by Transportation Research Board, which is under the National Academy of Engineering in USA. The first manual was published in 1950, and after that they have published several versions of it, and the last one was published in 2016. The concept of a software was introduced in 1994 with the manual. So from 1994 onwards, every manual has its own software which you can get with the manual, and that software is for implementing the procedures described in the manual. So it's a very limited application software. And the name of the software is Highway Capacity Software. Okay, it is published by the University of Florida. Okay, and they update it once a new manual is published. Uh, but we don't have to depend upon this highway capacity software. We have other softwares which implement the procedures described in the manual. For example, we have WISM. So if you search for WISM, you can find a student copy for it. We have Sidra. Okay, I have a copy for it, a trial version. You can download the trial version as well. We have Synchro, and there are many other softwares which can be used for implementing the procedures of highway capacity manual. So you don't have to depend upon highway capacity software itself. Now in the manual, highway capacity is defined as the maximum hourly flow rate. We discussed about flow rate earlier, and the maximum number of vehicles that can pass at an hourly rate. So maximum hourly rate of people or vehicles that can pass over a point or a section of the highway, that is uniform. Uniform meaning it is for that section of the highway which does not change its properties. The number of lanes, the lane width, the median, the shoulders, these things shouldn't change. When these things change, the capacity would change. And it is under, so maximum hourly rate for a point or a uniform section in a given time period under prevailing roadway traffic and control conditions. Okay, so the capacity is a function of or is dependent upon the conditions of the road, meaning design, the conditions of traffic, the volume of traffic, the size of vehicles, the percentage of heavy vehicles, and so on, and the control conditions, meaning the lane marking, the signs, the signals, and these things. So, all these things should remain constant for the section to be uniform. Okay, if any of these things change, then the roadway section will not remain uniform. So this table shows the capacity under ideal conditions for uninterrupted flow facilities. So we are discussing three types of uninterrupted flow facilities: highways, multi-lane highways, and freeways, multi-lane highways, and rural two-lane highways. So the capacities are given in the last column, and they are on the basis of their free flow speed, because free flow speed is not affected by the volume, so it is a speed which you can achieve under the design of the road. So the capacity should depend upon the design of the road, and the design of the road is represented with the free flow speed. Now the capacity is given in passenger cars per hour per lane, so it's measured in the units of passenger cars, not vehicles. So all vehicles are considered to be passenger cars. So this is one of the ideal conditions, and what are the other ideal conditions, we will discuss them later on. Now these capacities are given as per lane for freeways and multi-lane highways, but for rural two-lane highways they are given as combined capacity of the complete road, including both lanes, both directions. So the combined capacity is 3200 passenger cars per hour, not per lane. Okay, because for two lanes. And if you want to know, out of this, the maximum for one lane can be 1700 passenger cars per hour in one direction. Now why we are not calling it per lane? Because on two-lane highways, normally when one lane is blocked, the other lane is getting affected by it, because people will start to take U-turns, and they may try to overtake the other vehicles from the other lane. So that's why the capacity for two-lane highways is calculated as combined capacity. Now the highway capacity manual has introduced the concept of LOS. LOS means level of service. LOS stands for level of service. Now why this concept was introduced? So without the concept of level of service, we know two traffic conditions. One is free flow and the other one is capacity of the highway. Now both these conditions are unsuitable for design. You cannot design for free flow conditions because that means no volume. You cannot design for no volume. You cannot design for capacity as well, but because that means you don't have any margin of error now. If even 10 vehicles come extra, your highway will get jammed. So designing for capacity or designing for free flow conditions is not valid, is not practical. So we need some intermediate levels between the free flow condition and the capacity condition for which we can design the highway. So these intermediate levels are represented as level of service. This concept was introduced in 1965, and there are 6 levels of service starting from A to F. So just like your grades, A is what you want and F which you don't want. Okay, so A is free flow and F means jam, traffic jam. So the performance of the highway is measured in terms of level of service, which ranges from A to F. So how do we define level of service? It is the basically quality of operational conditions of the highway, or the quality of operations of traffic on the highway. So normally level of service is affected by speed and travel time, and so you can measure speed and travel time as well. But there are other important parameters which are not measured easily and which are incorporated in level of service. For example, freedom to maneuver, how easily you can maneuver within the traffic, how easily you can move, you can increase the speed, decrease the speed, and so on. What is the condition of traffic interruptions, how many interruptions are there on the road, what is the level of comfort and convenience of the drivers. So all these things depend upon or affect level of service. So level of service includes all these parameters, and all these parameters are combinedly denoting the quality of traffic flow. So as I said, level of service can range from A to F. So A means complete free flow. So your motion or your movement is not influenced by other drivers. Your speed is not affected by the flow because the flow is almost negligible. So you are driving at the design speed of the road or close to the design speed of the road. In these conditions, you can change your lanes or do other maneuvers very easily. And even if you have some blockage within traffic, that will not cause any disruption of the flow, because even if one lane is blocked, you can easily go from the other lane and so on. The spacing between the cars in this condition is very high, so it's almost 500 feet. Then we have level of service B, which is still considered as free flow condition, but now you have to respond to other drivers sometimes. Okay, so maneuvering like changing the lane and braking and accelerating is still very easy, but you have to be more careful now because there are more cars around you, or the cars are closer to you, so you have to be more careful. You may easily do your maneuver very easily and instantly whenever you want, but you have to take more care now. And still, if you have any disruption, if a lane is closed, if an accident happens, still there are enough gaps to uh, to avoid the effect of this disruption on the traffic. And car spacing, the spacing between the cars in this condition is almost 300 feet. Level of service is still considered as free flow, but the maneuverability is restricted now. So if you are going in your own lane, you can move at free flow speed very easily, but when you want to change your lane, then you may not find the gap. Okay, or you want to accelerate, then there may not be much gap between you and the other drivers to do that. So you have to be more careful. And in this condition, if you have a disruption which continues for a longer time, for example an accident for which half of the road is blocked for maybe half an hour, that may cause a complete traffic jam because there are no gaps now. And in this condition, the spacing between the cars is almost 200 feet. Then level of service D is what you get after free flow. So in this condition, the speed is below free flow level and density is increasing rapidly. And in this condition, a breakdown even for a small duration can cause a disruption in traffic, maybe a complete traffic jam as well. So now your maneuvering is very difficult. You have to basically, most of the times you are following the other drivers, and in order to change your lane, then you may have to wait for a longer time. The spacing between the cars in this condition is almost 150 feet. Then level of service E is what you call almost capacity. Level of service C indicates basically capacity. So obviously when you are, capacity means the road is completely filled, so there are no gaps. So even if somebody has to change the lane, the other drivers have to give him time to do that, otherwise there are no gaps, so other drivers have to stop for him. They have to be nice to other drivers in this condition. And obviously when other drivers stop for a guy who wants to change the lane, it will cause a shockwave effect in that lane. Okay, it will start a queue in that lane. Okay, so obviously you cannot afford even a small disruption, but that will cause a traffic jam. And in this condition, the spacing between the cars is 117 feet. Then we have level of service F, which is after capacity. So after capacity is considered as traffic jam or breakdown. You may see level of service F happening because of an incident or an accident, maybe some construction work going on, road blockage, or things like that. Or it can happen because the flow coming to the highway has exceeded its capacity, and we have seen that in examples which we were doing in the previous chapters. And normally level of service F is seen upstream of a bottleneck. We discussed previously, bottleneck is a point which is restricting the flow, the demand to go forward. So the section which does not fulfill its demand, so just before that section you will see a queue of vehicles, and that queue basically represents level of service F. So with each level of service you have a corresponding flow rate, the maximum flow rate which you can have at this level of service. So if you exceed the value of that flow rate, you will no longer be in that level of service, you have exceeded the level of service as well. So for example, we have a flow rate of 200 passenger cars per hour per lane for level of service A. So until 200 passenger cars per hour per lane, your road condition is at level of service A. When you exceed that, you go in level of service B, and then there will be a maximum value for level of service B as well for the flow rate, and when you exceed that you will enter level of service C. So the maximum value which you are considering for each level of service is what we call as service flow rate. So service flow rate is the maximum flow rate for a specific level of service under the prevailing roadway traffic and control conditions. Prevailing means existing. So whatever the existing conditions of the roadway are, the service flow rate will be according to that. And since it's a maximum value, so it's sometimes also referred to as the capacity of that level of service. So 200 is the capacity of the road for level of service A. It's not the complete capacity of the road, it's just the capacity of the road at which it can maintain level of service A. So it's also called the capacity of level of service. And when you exceed the service flow rate for E, now we said earlier E represents capacity of the road. So the service flow rate for E, or the capacity of level of service E, is also the capacity of the road as well. So when you exceed that, you enter the queue formation condition. Okay, so after you exceed the service flow rate for E, then you have entered the traffic jam or queue condition. Once you have service flow rate, you can multiply it with peak hour factor to get service volume. Now we know peak hour factor is the ratio of volume upon peak flow rate. So we are using that ratio to convert service flow rate into service volume. Okay, so you multiply any flow rate with peak hour factor, you will get volume. So if you multiply service flow rate with peak hour factor, you will get service volume. So you can get the maximum volume for each level of service as well if you have the flow rate. Now let us discuss the the complete definition of basic freeways before we move on to the analysis. So basic freeways are pure uninterrupted flow facilities, so they don't have any intersections. So how do you get on or get off a freeway? You have to use ramps. Okay, so these ramps will take you on the freeway or off the freeway. Okay, so these are lanes which are going on the bridge or coming out of the bridge. So the bridges are normally the freeways. So there are no intersections, so you have to make the exits and entrances through the ramps. And the basic freeways can be of different types based upon their number of lanes, And when we say number of lanes, we have to consider total number of lanes, which includes both directions. Then we have multi-lane highways that are also uninterrupted, considered as uninterrupted, but the multi-lane highways are not purely uninterrupted. They have intersections or interruptions, but these intersections are more than 2 miles from each other. Okay, so this is the main difference between multi-lane highways and freeways. Then the sub-classification of multi-lane highways is on the basis of its number of lanes and median type. So number of lanes, as we said, the total number of lanes you have in both directions, and median type is can be divided or undivided. So divided means with median and undivided means without median. This is another difference between multi-lane highways and freeways. Multi-lane highways can be undivided, freeways are always divided. Freeways cannot be without medians, but multi-lane highways can be with or without medians. The capacity analysis or level of service analysis for both these types of highways are done together because the procedure is same. The first thing you need to know is the free flow speed of the highway, and we have discussed earlier free flow speed, the speed in free flow conditions when the volume is almost zero. But if the volume is actually zero, then the measurement of speed is not possible. So we have adopted a practical definition of free flow condition, that is, if the flow is less than, or flow rate is less than 1000 vehicles per hour per lane, you can consider it a free flow condition. So up to 1000 vehicles per hour per lane is under free flow conditions. So any speed measured in this condition can be considered as free flow speed. After you know the free flow speed, you have curves between speed and flow rate, which can give you level of service and capacity for multi-lane highways and freeways. But these curves are used for ideal conditions. Now, what are the ideal conditions? The first ideal condition is that there are no heavy vehicles in the traffic stream, which also means that all the vehicles are passenger cars. The other ideal condition is that all drivers are familiar or regular users of the facility. So what do we mean by regular or familiar? The drivers who drive on the highways on regular basis, on routine basis, maybe like at least once a week or something like that. So with these base conditions, you will attain maximum flow rate, because heavy vehicles slow down the flow. So no heavy vehicles means more flow, and similarly unfamiliar drivers, irregular drivers, also cause disruption in the flow because they don't know what they are doing and where they're going. So familiar users and regular drivers will increase the flow. This is the speed flow curve to find out the capacity and level of service for freeways. So you can see for each free flow speed, I have a separate curve here. Okay, so each curve is for a different free flow speed, and then we have these diagonal lines. These diagonal lines are cutting the free flow speed curves at the service flow rate for each level of service. So the first diagonal line is cutting the curves at the service flow rates for A. So if you find out the flow rate when the first diagonal line is cutting the curves, if you find the flow rate at this point, this will give you the service flow rate for A. Similarly, if you find the flow rate when this line is cutting the free flow speed curve at any point, you will get the service flow rate for B. Okay, so for each service flow rate, I have a diagonal line which is dividing the curve according to its service flow rates. And you see the last diagonal line is for level of service E, and after E there is no curve because it is traffic jam condition. So obviously you cannot have any speed or any flow in traffic jam. So the curves are ending here. Now on the x-axis, I have mentioned earlier, we have flow rate, and these flow rate are in ideal conditions, which means passenger cars per hour per lane, no heavy vehicles and no unfamiliar drivers. And on the y-axis, you have the average speed of traffic. So at each level of service, you can find out the average speed of traffic from the y-axis. So these curves which I showed you in the previous slide, which you can also see here, are plotted using these equations. Okay, so for each free flow speed curve, you have a different equation. You can see it in the last column. So the first column is giving you the free flow speed, and the last column is giving you the equation for the curve of the free flow speed. And you can see in this equation we are using Vp. So Vp is the flow rate which we have on the x-axis of the curve. So if you know Vp, you can use a curve, or you can use a equation as well to find out the average speed of traffic. Okay, so the curve can give you the average speed of traffic on the y-axis, or you can use the equation in the last column of this table to find out the average speed of traffic for a road which has a specific free flow speed. Now you can see that for all these curves, there's a portion of the curve which is a straight line. All the curves have a straight portion as well. Now we know that for a straight portion or a straight line, a horizontal line, we don't need an equation. The horizontal line has a constant y value, right? So if you are in the straight portion of the curve, then you don't need to use the equation. Your speed will be equal to the free flow speed. The speed of the average speed of traffic will be equal to the free flow speed if you are within the straight portion. And how do I know up to what level is the straight portion, or up to what level of flow I can take the speed equal to free flow speed? So that point is known as the break point. So for each curve, you can see a break point value is given. So if your flow rate is under these values, then you can take the average speed of traffic to be equal to the free flow speed. And if you are above these values, then you should use the equations to find out the average speed of traffic. Then these are the curves for multi-lane highways. It's the same thing here. We have the curves and we have the diagonal lines for each level of service, and each curve is for a different free flow speed. And then we have this table which gives you the equation for each curve, and again we have the breakpoint here. Okay, so up to breakpoint the speed of traffic is equal to the free flow speed. Okay, and what is the breakpoint for all the curves for multi-lane highways? The breakpoint is 1400 passenger cars per hour per lane. So for multi-lane highways, we don't have a different value for each curve. All curves have the same breakpoint, that is 1400. So if your flow is 1400 or less than that for a multi-lane highway, you can take the average speed of traffic equal to free flow speed. Otherwise, use one of these equations according to the free flow speed of the curve. Now, as you have seen in the curves, that the level of service is marked with a diagonal line on the curve. These lines. Okay, so and these lines are basically diagonal lines in a speed flow curve. Now, if you take the slope of any of these lines, it will be speed upon flow, and if you take the inverse of that, it will be density. Flow upon speed is density. So if I know the slope of any of the lines, I can do the inverse and I can find out its density. And the level of service in that case can be represented in the ranges of density as well. For example, uh, the for level of service A, the density will range from 0 to the inverse of the slope of this line, the first line. Okay, Why inverse? Because slope will be speed upon flow and density is flow upon speed. So I have to do the inverse. Then for level of service B, the range of density will be the inverse slope of this line and the inverse slope of this line. Okay, and so on. So for every diagonal line, you can take the slope, do the inverse, and find out the range of density for that level of service. Okay, so then if you know the density, then you don't have to look into the curves. So using that concept, they have developed this table which gives you the range of density for each level of service for freeways. So this column is for freeways and for multi-lane highways. So this one is for multi-lane highways. Okay. So basically density uh, affects the speed of the driver and as well as the flow. So we combine both of them in density, and when you do the inverse of density, it becomes the slope of this line on the curve or this line in this diagram, and then you can plot them. This is how these lines are plotted. Actually, these lines are plotted using the densities. Okay, so you do the reverse, you can get the density for each of these lines. So this table which you see now on the slide gives you the service flow rate for freeways. And how did I get it? I got it from these curves. Okay, so these are the curves for freeways. So we have the diagonal lines, and these diagonal lines, when they are crossing a particular curve, you can find out the flow rate at the intersection point of the diagonal line, and that flow rate will become the service flow rate for the respective level of service. So you can see the first diagonal line is for level of service A. So if I find out the flow rate at intersection points of these diagonal lines and the curves, I will get the service flow rate for level of service A. Similarly, if I find out the flow rate at intersection points of the second diagonal line with the curves, I'll get the service flow rates for level of service B. Okay, so you can see the table has been made for us to show us the service flow rate for each free flow speed. So each free flow speed means a different curve on this diagram. Then the same thing has been done with the curves of multi-lane highways. So you have the service flow rates for multi-lane highways as well, and since the values in the diagram are in passenger cars per hour per lane, so these flow rates are also in passenger cars per hour per lane. So we have this example in which the adjusted demand flow rate for a highway is given as 1800 passenger cars per hour. So it is adjusted, means it is already converted to the ideal value of passenger cars and so on. And the free flow speed of the highway is given as 65 miles per hour, and we have to find out the level of service for this highway. Now you see 65 miles per hour speed curve is this one. Okay, and if you plot 1800 on the x-axis, it will be from this point and you go up and you reach the curve of 65 miles per hour. So you are at this point. Okay, and this point, as you can see, is within the diagonal line which is representing level of service D. Okay, so from the curve I know that the level of service is D. Now if you want to know the speed of the highway, the speed of traffic on the highway, then from this point you draw a line towards the y-axis, which you can see here. They have already drawn it for us, and this line is crossing the y-axis at this point. So this point is estimated to be at 62 miles per hour. Okay, so the average speed of traffic on this highway is 62. Now the flow is 1800 and the average speed is 62. So if you do 1800 upon 62, that will give you the density of this highway, which comes out to be 29 passenger cars per mile per lane. Now we have a density table as well, in which the level of service is given in terms of density. Let us look at that table. So you can see the table here on the top. So for a freeway, if your density is 29 uh, passenger cars per mile per lane, that means you are in this range, and this range indicates level of service D. Okay. Now let's say you do not have the the speed flow curves, and you have these equations. Now you want to use these equations, okay, instead of using the curve. So first of all, I have to again pick the free flow speed which I have. So my free flow speed is 65. Okay, did I cross the break point or did I not cross the break point? My flow rate was 1800, so that means I have crossed the break point. So I have to use the equation here, and I will use this equation. So using this equation, putting Vp as 1800, you can see here. So the value comes out to be 62.7 miles per hour. Now, if you calculate the density using this value, so the flow is 1800, the speed is 62.7 miles per hour. So your uh, density will be approximately 28.7 passenger cars per mile per lane. And if you go back to this table, you will see that it's still in the range for level of service D. Now, whenever you are finding out level of service or free flow speed of a highway, these are the conditions which you must know. So they are called as prevailing conditions of the highway, existing conditions of the highway. So basically things you have to know. So you should know the lane width, you should know the lateral clearance. Lateral clearance means the distance on the side of the road to the nearest obstruction, to the nearest object, from the edge of the lane to the nearest object. Then type of median if it's a multi-lane highway, because I told you for freeways medians are already there. Then frequency of ramps if it's a freeway, because on ramps the exits and entrances are from ramps. And frequency of access points if it's a multi-lane highway, because on multi-lane highways you have access points. Access points meaning at grade junctions or intersection points. Then you must know the presence of heavy vehicles in the traffic stream. If they are heavy vehicles, then what is their percentage? And you should know the proportion of drivers who are familiar drivers. Okay, that was the other base condition we discussed earlier, that the drivers should be familiar or regular drivers. So what is the proportion of drivers which are occasional? Occasional means they come on the highway very rarely, or they are unfamiliar users of the highway. So what is their percentage? To find out the free flow speed, you can either measure it in the field, or you can use this equation as well. This equation is for freeways only. So you have 75.4, which is basically the uh, maximum design speed for freeways. So if you want to change, you can change according to your local standards. Then we have three factors here. The first one is the factor for lane width, and you can see the table for lane width here. Then the second one is the table for the factor for lateral clearance, and we have another table for lateral clearance which I will show in the next slide. And we have TRD here. TRD means total ramp density. So how do we find out total ramp density? On the section, or for the section of highway which you are considering for your study. So let's say this is a section of highway. From the midpoint of this section, you go 3 miles forward and count how many ramps you have on the right hand side, and then you go 3 miles back and count how many ramps you have on the right hand side. So it's a total of 6 miles, 3 miles back and 3 miles forward. So you count how many ramps you have in this 6-mile length, and then you divide by 6, the number of ramps divided by 6. This will give you total ramp density. So this is a table for the factor of lateral clearance. We have the number of lanes in the top row here, number of lanes in one direction. So if it's a 4-lane highway, the number of lanes in one direction will be 2. Then you should know how much is the lateral clearance on the right hand side of the highway. Okay, so this is the lateral clearance on the right hand side, and then you have the factors here. So this lateral clearance also includes the shoulder as well. Then this is the equation for multi-lane highways. So again, the first term is the base free flow speed, which also means the design speed of the multi-lane highway. Okay, so you can change it as per your local design speed. And then you have the 4 adjustment factors. The first one is for lane width, which I already showed you. The second one is for lateral clearance. Then the third one is for median type, and the last one is for access point density. Now lateral clearance for multi-lane highways is measured from both directions, or from both sides of the direction which you are considering. So you have to consider how much lateral clearance you have on the right hand shoulder, and then you have to consider how much lateral clearance you have on the median side. Okay, so from the edge of the lane in your direction, how much is the distance to the edge of the lane in the other direction. Okay, or if there is median, then how much is the distance between the median and uh, the edge of the lane in your direction. So that will be the lateral clearance on the left hand side, and in the end you will add both of them to get the total lateral clearance. Then we have the factor for median type, and then we have the less access point density. Now if we don't have a median, then the lateral clearance on the left hand side will become 0. In that case, total lateral clearance should be lateral clearance on the right hand side plus 0. But since we have a factor which is already accounting for median type, so whenever we don't have a median, we will consider the lateral clearance on the left hand side to be equal to 6 feet, which is our standard value for lateral clearance. Okay, why we are doing that? So that the adjustment for median is not done twice. Otherwise you are adjusting lateral clearance because of having no median, and then you have another factor which is adjusting for median type as well. Okay, so the effect of median type will show in the factor for lateral clearance as well as in the factor for median type. So to avoid that, whenever we don't have a median, the lateral clearance on the left hand side is considered as standard, which is 6 feet. So without median, the total lateral clearance will be 6 feet plus whatever you have on the right hand side. And then for access point density, you will count the number of access points which you have on the right hand side of your direction. Okay, so these access points will count if you have any entrance from a driveway or a parking area or any intersection, whatever you have on the right hand side, you will count it for the full segment. Okay, and then you will divide it by the length of the segment. So this is the table for factor for lateral clearance. Okay, so it's given for a 4-lane highway and a 6-lane highway, and this is the factor for median type. The first table is for the factor for median type. So we have 3 median types. We have undivided, which means without median. We have divided, which means with median, and we have TWLTL, which means two-way left turn lane. TWLTL means two-way left turn lane. Now what does it mean? It's a extra lane which is given in the middle of the road, which can be used by drivers from both directions whenever they want to make a left turn. So let's say we have one lane here and then we have the extra lane, and then we have one lane on the right hand side. Now if you are the driver in this lane, you want to make a left turn, you will come to this lane, and then from here you will make the left turn. Okay, similarly, if there's a driver coming from this direction and he wants to make a left turn, he will go in this extra lane from his direction. Okay, and he will make the left turn from here. Okay, so these lanes can serve both directions. So that's why we call them two-way left turn lanes. We don't have them here, but in USA and some other countries they use it. Then we have the last table, which is factor for access point density. So you have the access point density here, and you have the factor written on this side. Consider this example. We have a 6-lane old freeway. It has 11 feet lane width, and it has road obstructions coming after 2 feet from the right hand side of the pavement edge, and the ramp density is 3 ramps per mile. You want to know the free flow speed of this freeway. So the equation for finding out the free flow speed is given on the top here. So we needed the adjustment factor for lane width. The lane width is given as 11 feet, so the adjustment factor will be 1.9, and lateral clearance was given as 2 feet, and it is a 6-lane freeway, so number of lanes in each direction is 3, so your adjustment factor for lateral clearance will be 1.6. The ramp density is given as 3, so you put TRD equals to 3 here. So after putting the parameters in this equation, you will get the free flow speed to be 63.8 miles per hour. This example is for a multi-lane highway. So we have 4-lane undivided multi-lane highway. The posted speed limit is given. We have 11 feet lanes, and we have road obstructions coming 4 feet from the right hand side edge. Access points are 3 access points per mile, and we have to find out the free flow speed for this direction. So the equation for multi-lane highway free flow speed is this one. In this equation, the first thing you need is BFFS, which is the design speed of the highway. Now in the question, they have given me the speed limit to be 50. Now speed limit is normally below the design speed. So I know that I need to add something to this value in order to get the base free flow speed. Now that value is normally, or at least minimum 5. Okay, so whenever you are given with the speed limit of the road and you want to find out the base free flow speed or design speed of the highway, you can add 5 into it, and then you can reach the base free flow speed value. So in this case, base free flow speed for me is 55. Then I need the factor for lane width adjustment, which will come from the table which I already showed you for multi-lane highways as well. So for 11 feet lane, the factor for lane width is 1.9. Then lateral clearance. Now the lateral clearance on the right hand side was given as 4 feet, and it was said that the left hand side is undivided. It's an undivided highway. So as I told you earlier, that if it is undivided highway, then the left hand side lateral clearance will be taken as 6 feet. Okay, so right hand side is 4 and left will be 6, so 6 plus 4 gives you 10 feet. So for a 10 feet lateral clearance, you are here, and it's a 4-lane freeway, so you have to look into this section. So your factor comes up to be 0.4. Then the factor for median type, the median type is undivided, so your factor is 1.6. And the access point density was given as 30 access points per mile. So for 30 access points per mile, the factor is 7.5. So you put all these factors into this equation, you will get the free flow speed to be 43.6 miles per hour. One of the reasons of calculating or finding out the free flow speed is to use these curves to find out the level of service or capacity or whatever. And I showed you the equations for these curves also require you to have the free flow speed with you so that you can select the particular equation. Now the problem with these curves is they are given for specific values of free flow speed, while the values which you are calculating from the equation or from the field may be not exactly equal to these values. So the values for given for the curves of the equations are these basically. So you can see they are fixed. But I may get a value of, let's say, instead of having 75, I may have a value of 74. Okay, so what should I do in that case? Which curve should I pick, or which equation should I pick? I don't have any equation or curve for 74. So in that case, we will basically do some rounding off and we will select the curve or the equation which is to the nearest free flow speed. Okay, so nearest one, which one is the nearest to 75? So they have given me the ranges here. So for 75, anything from 72.5 to 77.5 is considered close to 75. Similarly, anything from 67.5 to 70 is considered close to, 67.5 to 72.5 is considered close to 70, and so on. Okay, so they have given basically the range which can be considered close to a particular free flow speed value for which the curve and the equation is given. So basically you have to pick the nearest value, and if it is exactly in the middle, then you will go for the higher value. So 67.5 is considered close to 70 and 62.5 is considered close to 65, not 60, and so on. Using level of service, we can perform three types of analysis: operational analysis, service flow rate and service volume analysis, and design analysis. Operational analysis means that you have an existing road which has a traffic condition, which has a roadway condition, which has some control conditions which are given, or you can go and observe it, and you are trying to find out the level of service for that highway. Now for finding out level of service, we need two things: we need free flow speed and we need the flow rate. Okay, and that flow rate should be in passenger cars per hour per lane. Okay, when you go in the field, you take the volume for the peak hour, so we are calling it as V. So this is the volume. If you want to convert volume into flow rate, you have to divide by peak hour factor. Okay, and then the flow rate is taken as per lane. Okay, so you have to divide by number of lanes as well, and this is number of lanes in your direction, and then you have to convert the number of vehicles to number of passenger cars. This is one of the ideal conditions, that all vehicles are passenger cars. So you'll divide it with a factor which is called as a factor for heavy vehicles. You can see it here, and we will discuss later on how to calculate this factor. And the last factor is the factor for driver population, which is the proportion of drivers which are familiar with your highway. They are regular drivers on the highway. And again, the last two are basically part of the ideal conditions that we have said. The base conditions: all drivers are familiar drivers and all vehicles are passenger cars. So in order to convert the existing volume into the base volume or the base flow rate, we need to divide by these two factors. Then if you are doing a service flow rate or service volume analysis, so basically you are trying to find out how much should be the service flow rate for any highway under the prevailing conditions, under the existing conditions. So you are given with a set of conditions, and they have asked you to find out how much flow rate we can allow to maintain the service level of service under I. Okay, so I is the level of service which you want, and then you calculate it for the existing conditions. So you take maximum service flow rate, which is the ideal service flow rate you will get from the speed flow curves from which you were getting the level of service as well, and then you multiply with the number of lanes and the factor for heavy vehicle and the factor for driver population. After multiplying with this factor, you will get the flow rate in vehicles per hour. It will give you the flow rate in vehicles per hour. And then if you want, instead of flow rate, if you want service volume, so then you multiply the service flow rate with peak hour factor as well. So you will get service volume for level of service I. And the last type of analysis is the design. So in design analysis, you already have a design volume, directional design hourly volume. So you are trying to design a highway and you have found the peak hour factor. Okay, and on this highway you want to maintain a specific level of service which we are referring to as I. So I is the level of service you want. So in order to maintain level of service I, how much maximum service flow rate I can have? So this is again coming from the speed flow curves, and then you divide with the factor for heavy vehicle and the factor for driver population, and doing this you are trying to basically find out how many number of lanes should I have to maintain level of service I while I have design volume equal to this. So design analysis is done to find out the number of lanes for a highway which you are going to design. Now in the previous equations we are using the factor for heavy vehicle. So the heavy vehicle adjustment factor is calculated from this equation. So in this equation you have PT, which means percentage of trucks. We have PR, which means percentage of recreational vehicles. And then we have ET, which is the equivalency factor for trucks. And we have ER, which is the equivalency factor for recreational vehicles. Now before using this equation, let us define what do we mean by heavy vehicles. According to highway capacity manual, any vehicle which operates on more than 4 wheels is called as a heavy vehicle. So cars are not considered as heavy vehicles. Even if you have a truck or a bus which is operating on 4 tires, it cannot be considered as a heavy vehicle. So bikes and all these things cannot be considered as heavy vehicles. And then within heavy vehicles we have trucks and buses. Okay, and we already know what do we mean by trucks and buses. And we have recreational vehicles. So recreational vehicles are basically vehicles like these, which you can see in the picture here in the image. You see these types of vehicles like ice cream trucks, and if you have gone to other countries you may have seen these camper homes, container homes, and if you have gone to a concert or something like that, you will see that these or maybe even a football match or something like that, you will see that the players or these actors or these performers use their own trucks, use their own vans, and these vans are basically like small homes. They are like a small home for them, so they have all the facilities inside them. So these are basically recreational vehicles. Okay, so they are heavy vehicles but they are not used as conventional trucks and buses. Then we have the equivalency factors. What do we mean by equivalency factor? This is the effect of a truck or a bus or a recreational vehicle on the traffic as compared to a car. Okay, so the equivalency factors ET or ER are the effect of any type of heavy vehicle on the traffic in comparison to a car. So car if you add one car to the traffic, it will reduce the traffic by, or it will reduce the flow and speed by, let's say, X amount. Okay, and if in the traffic stream, if you add a truck, then that truck may slow down the flow and the speed by 2x amount. So in comparison to a car, its effect is double. Okay, similarly for a bus, it may be more than double or less than double, whatever. Okay, it may not be integer every time. It can be 1.5 times car of a car as well. So if you take the ratio of the effect of a car and the effect of a truck, that ratio will basically give you the equivalency factor. So if the car is having half of the effect of the truck, then the equivalency factor for the truck will be 2. Okay, if a bus is having 3 times the effect of a car, the equivalency factor for the bus will be 3, and so on. Now for equivalency factors, the method is explained in the book how to get it, but we will not go into the methods. We will use the tables which are given in the book, which I will show you just now. Before we go for the equivalency factor, they are calling it here as the passenger car equivalency factor, but basically it means the same thing. You have to determine the terrain conditions first. Before you look into the factor, you have to specify the terrain conditions. So you would know that heavy vehicles may have a different effect in different terrain conditions. For example, if you have a truck driving on a flat surface, then its effect on the traffic will be less as compared to the same truck driving on an upward gradient. And the effect of that truck on upward gradient will be different from the effect on downward gradient. So first of all, you have to identify the terrain conditions which you have on the road, and on the basis of that you will identify the equivalency factor. Now terrain conditions can be divided into two main categories: general terrain condition and the gradient condition. Okay, we have three general terrain conditions which are mentioned here. These are the three general terrain conditions we have. You can have level terrain where the gradient is less than 2%. You can have rolling terrain where the gradient is maybe 2% or more than 2%, but it is very small and it is very subtle. Okay, there is no sharp gradient here, there is no sharp change in gradient as well. So it will cause the heavy vehicles to reduce the speed, but they will still be driving at a significantly high speed. And then you have the mountainous terrain where the gradients are so sharp and they are so rapidly changing that the heavy vehicles have to go on a very slow speed, which they are referring to here as crawl speed. So crawl speed is something which you will observe when the speed is almost zero. The vehicle is moving, but you can actually go past the vehicle even if you are walking. Okay, so sometimes for heavy vehicles it happens when they are going on sharp and steep gradients. So a terrain which causes the heavy vehicles to go on a crawling speed, they are called as mountainous terrains. So these are the general terrain conditions. Then we have the gradient condition. Now if you have a section of the highway which has a length of more than 0.25 miles and its gradient is uh, the gradient is 3% or more. If the length of the gradient is up to 2.25 miles and the gradient is 3% or more, then it will be considered as a general terrain condition. Okay, so if a gradient of 3% or more is maintained for less than 0.25 miles, then you will go for general terrain conditions. Okay, if it is more than 0.25 miles, if a gradient of 3% or more is continued for more than 0.25 miles, then you will consider it as a gradient condition. Then there is another condition that if the gradient is less than 3%, but its length is going more than 0.5 miles. If the gradient is less than 3%, but if it is going more than 0.5 miles, then you will again consider it as a gradient condition. If it is going for less than 0.5 miles, you will consider it as a general terrain condition. Okay. So to consider any highway under general terrain conditions, we have two conditions. The first condition is if the gradient is more than 3% or 3%, then it should not continue with that gradient for more than 0.25 miles. Okay, then you can consider it as general terrain condition. If second condition is if the gradient is less than 3%, then it should not continue for more than 0.5 miles to consider it as a general terrain condition. If it goes for more than 0.5 miles, then you will consider it as a gradient condition, not general terrain. If you have a general terrain conditions, then value of equivalency factor for trucks and buses and recreation vehicles can be taken from this table. So ET means equivalency factor for trucks and buses both, and ER is only for recreation vehicles. If you have a gradient, then you will use this table. If you have an upward gradient, okay, so in this table you need the value of the gradient, you need the length of the gradient, and then you need the percentage of trucks and buses combined. Then you can find out the value of ET. Similarly, if you have upward gradient, you want to find the value of ER, then you will use this table, and instead of using the percentage of trucks and buses, you use the percentage of recreational vehicles. And if you have a downward gradient, then to find out the value of ET, you will use this table. And if you want to find out the value of ER for downward gradient, you will use the ER for level terrain. ER for downward gradient is equal to ER of level terrain, irrespective of any value of the gradient. But for ET downward gradient, you have this table here. So we have this example here where a freeway has a rolling terrain and it has 12% trucks, 3% RVs, and the peak hour volume is 3200 vehicles per hour. We have to convert it to equivalent passenger cars per hour. So if you divide the volume with heavy vehicle adjustment factor, it will convert from vehicles per hour to passenger cars per hour. Okay, so 3200 should be divided with heavy vehicle adjustment factor, and heavy vehicle adjustment factor can be calculated as this. Now in this equation, PT is given as 12% here, percentage of trucks. PR is given as 3%, percentage of recreational vehicles. And for ET and ER, we have to look into the table for general terrain conditions because it's a rolling terrain. So you can see for rolling terrain, ET is 2.5 and ER is 2. So if you put all the equations, all the values in the equation for heavy vehicle adjustment factor, you will get heavy vehicle adjustment factor to be 0.82, and if you divide 3200 with 0.82, you will get 3872 passenger cars per hour. There is another way to solve this equation, which is directly multiplying with the equivalency factors. So how do you do that? So you still need the equivalency factor for the terrain condition, so it is 2.5 and 2 from here, the same factors, and then the passenger car equivalent volume will be the total volume multiplied by the percentage of trucks, which is 0.12, multiplied by the equivalency factor for trucks. Okay, so this will give you the equivalent number of passenger cars because of the trucks, the equivalent effect of the passenger cars due to the trucks. And then you have 3200, which is the total volume. Out of that, 3% are RVs, so multiply by 0.03, multiply by the equivalency factor for RVs. So this will give you the complete effect of recreational vehicles in terms of passenger cars. Okay, and then so adding this with the with 3200 multiplied by 1, which is the total percentage, 100% total percentage of vehicles, minus percentage of trucks because its effect is already taken here, minus percentage of recreation vehicles because again the effect of recreation vehicles has been taken. So the remaining is what? If you do 100% minus 12% trucks minus 3% RVs, the remaining is passenger cars already. So I don't have to multiply passenger cars with any factor. So 3200 minus multiply by the percentage of passenger cars I have, okay, without multiplying with any equivalency factor. So when you add these three things, you will get still the passenger car equivalent volume, okay. So you add the passenger car equivalent because of trucks, then you add passenger car equivalent because of recreational vehicles, and then you add the remaining actual passenger cars in traffic. So you get the passenger car equivalent. So there are two methods to find out passenger car equivalent volume. You can calculate heavy vehicle adjustment factor and divide the volume with that factor, or you can multiply with the percentage and adjustment equivalency factor for each type of vehicle, and then you can add it with the actual number of passenger cars. This is another example. Here we have a section of freeway which has 15% trucks, 5% RVs. Its volume is 2500, and this section has a gradient of 5% which is going for more than 0.75 miles. Okay, so now I cannot use the general terrain conditions because it's a gradient which is going for a length of 0.75 miles, which is above the conditions which I have set for general terrain conditions. So here I have to use the other tables which are for gradient conditions. So we have these two tables for gradient conditions. So first of all, I need to find out the value of ET. So ET we are given with 15% trucks. Okay, so 15% trucks is here. Then we have 5% gradient. So 5% gradient is in this range, and the length was given as 0.75 miles, which is here. Okay, so if you go in this row here, for 15% trucks the ET is 2.5. okay, then for ER we have this table. So ER was 5%, so 5% is here. Then we have 5% gradient, which is in this range, and 0.75 mile length, which is here. So value of ER will come out to be 3. So if you put the values in the equation for FHV like this, the FHV will come out to be 0.755, and if you divide the volume with FHV, you will get the passenger car equivalent volume at 3313 passenger cars per hour. In the previous example, we saw that one value of gradient was given and we were calculating the factors for that value. But on an actual highway, there can be multiple gradients which are present in your segment. In that case, calculating factors for each gradient and then calculating the equivalent volume will make the analysis complicated. Instead of that, if I can combine all the gradient values into a single value, it will make my life easier. So how to combine them? Let us look at it in this example. So we have a segment in which there is a 3% upward gradient which is given for 3000 feet, and then there is a 5% upward gradient which is given for 5000 feet, and we need to combine them so that we can calculate the heavy vehicle adjustment factor for a single gradient. Now to combine them, we will use a method which is called as the average gradient method. And for average gradient method, what we will do is we will calculate the difference in elevation caused because of each gradient. So how much difference in elevation we have because of 3% gradient? It will be 3000 the length of the gradient, multiply by the gradient. So in 3000 feet we have a difference of 90 feet in elevation because of 3% gradient. Similarly, 5000 feet for 5% gradient, you multiply them, you get 250 feet. And if you add both of them, the total difference in elevation is 340 feet. Then the average gradient will be total difference in elevation 350 feet upon total length. So total length is how much? 3000 plus 5000. So total will be 8000. So total difference in elevation upon total length 340 upon 8000 will give you the average gradient. So if you are now looking for the factors for this segment, then you use a gradient of 4.25%. Don't use 3% or don't use 5%, use 4.25%. Then there are some more examples for the same procedure. In each example you have to calculate the total difference in elevation, and you will divide with the total length, so you can practice it on your own. Then the last thing we have to know for finding out the flow rate is the driver population factor, which is the proportion of drivers which are familiar to the highway. Normally it is taken as 1, especially for urban areas, because once the highway is constructed, after a few weeks or after a few months, drivers know about that highway, they become familiar with it, and nowadays it comes on Google Maps as well. So after that you are familiar. So normally it is taken as 1, but if you want to take a worst case scenario, then up to 0.85 is also allowed. Now we have a 6-lane freeway, and for one direction of this freeway we have been given the service flow rate under the existing conditions. Okay, and these flow rates are given in vehicles per hour. Okay, so from A to E we are given with the service flow rates. So we have to answer these 3 questions. The first question is, what is the capacity of this facility? Now we said from these levels of service, level of service E is basically what represents capacity. Okay, so whatever is the service flow rate for E, that becomes the capacity of the facility. Okay, so the capacity of this highway is 7000 vehicles per hour. Then we have to find out the service volumes for this freeway, given the peak hour factor is 0.95. Now the relationship between service volume and service flow rate is basically peak hour factor. So you multiply these values with peak hour factor and you will get service volume, like I have done here. So I have taken each value for the flow rate and multiply with the peak hour factor. Okay, so the flow rates are given. So 32450 is the flow rate, multiply by the peak hour factor, you will get service volume for level of service A. Similarly for B and C, just these values will change and the peak hour factor is 0.95. So these are basically giving you the volumes under existing conditions or the prevailing conditions to maintain each level of service on this freeway. So in order to maintain level of service B, my volume should be maximum 3900. Okay, and so on. Then for the third part, we have to find out the maximum service flow rate under ideal conditions. The third part of the question is find out maximum service flow rate under ideal conditions. Now what are ideal conditions? The first ideal condition was that we don't have any heavy vehicles. The second one was that we have familiar drivers. And then these ideal flow rates are calculated as per lane. So I have the service flow rates under existing conditions which are given as vehicles per hour. So I need to convert them to passenger cars per hour per lane. Okay, so to convert from vehicles per hour to passenger cars per hour, I will divide by a factor of heavy vehicle, which was given in the question. To account for the non-familiar drivers, I will divide with the factor for driver population. So FP is the driver for factor for driver population. So 1 means all drivers are familiar. So I will divide with 1, which will not make any difference. And then I will divide with the number of lanes in each direction. It was a 6-lane freeway, so number of lanes in one direction is 3. So you take values from here, for example, level of service A, the maximum flow rate, service flow rate for A under existing condition 3250. So 3250 divided by heavy vehicle adjustment factor divided by driver population factor and divided by number of lanes in one direction. So this will give you the maximum service flow rate for level of service A under ideal conditions. So under ideal conditions, 1159 passenger cars can be handled by each lane at level of service A. And you do the same thing for B, C, D, and E, and you get the maximum service flow rate for each level of service. So we have this example of a freeway, a 4-lane freeway. It has 10 feet lane width and it has 0 feet from the lateral object. The run density is given. It has rolling terrain. The volume on this freeway is 3,500 vehicles per hour. Peak hour factor is given, and then there are no trucks and buses. And because this road is considered as a parkway, and a parkway does not allow any heavy vehicles. So we want to find out the level of service. To find out level of service, I need two things. First of them is the flow rate. So Vp equals to this, where volume equals 3,500. Peak hour factor is 0.95. Number of lanes is 2 because it is 4 lanes, so one direction will have 2 lanes. Heavy vehicle adjustment factor not required because there are no heavy vehicles. And driver population factor, I told you that you can take it equal to 1. So flow rate comes out to be 1842 passenger cars per hour. Next thing we need is the free flow speed. This is the equation for free flow speed of the freeway. We need the adjustment factor for lane width and lateral clearance. These are tables we have. So the lane width was 10 feet. So for 10 feet, the factor for lane width is 6.6. When the lateral clearance is given as 0, and number of lanes in each direction was 2. So the factor for lateral clearance comes out to be 3.6. And the ram density was given as 4.5 rams per mile. You put these values into the equation, and you get the free flow speed to be 53.8 miles per hour. Now if you put these values in the speed flow curve, you can see them, they are plotted here. Now 53.8 miles per hour free flow speed is the closest curve you have is 55 miles per hour. Okay, so I have selected this curve, and on this curve, if you plot the flow rate 1852 and you go towards the curve, you are meeting the curve at this point. So this is the level of service D. Okay, so the freeway has a level of service D. Now if you want to find out the density of this freeway, remember we have a density table as well, but we have already found the level of service from here, but let's say we want to find the density as well. So to find the density, you have the flow rate, and you need the average speed of the traffic. So where the flow rate is touching the curve, you draw a horizontal line towards the y-axis, and you will get the average speed of the traffic. So using the average speed of the traffic, you can find out the density using this equation. It will be flow upon the speed of flow. So the density comes out to be 33.6 passenger cars per mile per lane. We have another example which is for a 6-lane freeway. It has 12 feet lane, 6 feet clearance on the right hand side, rolling terrain, ram density is given, peak hour factor is given. It has 8% trucks but no RVs, and we have regular familiar drivers. The volume is given, and this volume is increasing by 6% every year. Okay, and it will continue to do so for next 20 years. So for the next 20 years, each year traffic increases by 6%. Okay, so the growth rate is constant for the next 20 years. The traffic is increasing by 6% every year. So we have to find out the level of service what we have now. Okay, and then we have to find out the level of service after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and 20 years. Okay, so we have to find out the current level of service, and then using the volume and the growth rate, we will find out the volume in the future year, and then what will be the level of service in the future year. So let us start solving this. We'll start with the calculation of free flow speed. So this is the equation for free flow speed. So we need the lane width adjustment factor and the lateral clearance adjustment factor. The lane width was given as 12 feet, so this means the adjustment factor is 0. Then the lateral clearance is given as 6 feet, this means again the adjustment factor is 0. So we have to worry about the total ramp density only, which is given as 2.8 amps per mile. So you put it in the equation, so everything is 0 except the total ramp density. So the free flow speed comes out to be 67.8 miles per hour. And second thing which we will find out is the heavy vehicle adjustment factor. So this is the equation for the factor, and in this equation we will be using only trucks, the equivalency factor for trucks, because there were no recreational vehicles, so this becomes 0. Okay, we have 8% trucks, and for rolling terrain the factor is 2.5. You can see the factor 2.5. When you put the values in the equation, the heavy vehicle adjustment factor comes out to be 0.89. Now in this question, since I have to find out the level of service repetitively, so I will use a concept of service flow rate here. So if you remember, service flow rate is the maximum flow rate which you can have at level of service I, and then we have service volume, which is the maximum volume which you can have at level of service I. Okay, so what I will do is I will find out the maximum service flow rate for the free flow speed which I have. Now I calculated the free flow speed to be 67.8 miles per hour. So for 67.8 miles per hour, the service flow rate values are these. 67.8 is closer to 70 than 65. So I will consider my free flow speed to be 70. And for a speed of 70 miles per hour, the maximum service flow rates under ideal conditions are these. Okay, so for 70 miles per hour, the maximum service flow rate for A is 770, for B is 1250, and so on. Now, from where are we getting the values? From these curves. I explained earlier as well. These diagonal lines, wherever they are intersecting the curve, you find out the value at the x-axis, and this will become your service flow rate. Now, so if the service flow rate which I have on my facility, if it is exceeding the maximum service flow rate from the table, that means I am in the next level of service. So if the service flow rate on my facility exceeds, for example, 770, that means I'm in level of service B, and so on. So first of all, I need to calculate the service flow rate for my facility. So service flow rate is calculated using this equation. Okay, and service volume can be calculated using this equation. So I will calculate service volume for each level of service for my freeway. So this is the calculation of service volume. So maximum service flow rate, which is for 70 miles per hour speed, is coming from here, MSF. Then it's a 6-lane freeway, so N becomes 3 for each direction. Heavy vehicle adjustment factor I already calculated in the previous slide, 0.89. So obviously it will not change for any level of service. Driver population factor, it was given as 1. Even if it was not given, you can take it as 1. So when you multiply MSF with all these values, you will get service flow rate. And then if you multiply the service flow rate with peak hour factor, you will get service volume. So for each uh, level of service, you have service volume on the existing conditions on your freeway. Now what is the actual volume, and if this volume is exceeding the service volume or not. So for that we have the equation for the what we call as the present value equation. So this equation says that present value of anything equals the current value, in this case it's the volume, and multiply by 1 plus r, where r is the rate of growth. In our case it is given as 6%, to the power n, where n is the number of years after which you need the present value. So if I need the present value after 5, n will become 5, okay, and so on. So you just change the values of n here and you will get the volume at particular after particular number of years. Okay, so put n as 5, you get the volume after 5 years. You put n as 10, you get volume after 10 years, and so on. Now you compare these values, okay, with the service volume you have calculated. So you see in the first year, 0 year, where I did not apply any n, this is the current level of service. So the value is 3600 and this value is in this range. So I have exceeded the service volume for D and I am still within the service volume for C. So my level of service is C. Okay, next one, 4818. So you are now in this range. So you have exceeded the volume for C, but you are still within D. So your level of service is D. For all other values, you can see you are exceeding the maximum value, which is for E. So your level of service is F. Now we have seen that in the previous table that uh, in most of the years the level of service is found to be F, and mainly it was between the 5th and the 10th year when it converted from D to F. So between those years, what year was it exactly when the level of service changed from D to F? So it was between 5 to 10, but where? Was it the 6th year, the 7th year, or what? So again we will use the present value equation. Okay, and now here I have put the present value to be 5895, which is the capacity. Okay, you can say the capacity, or it was the service volume at level of service E. So E means capacity. So the service volume which you calculated in the previous table, in the previous slide, the service volume for E becomes my capacity. So in which year did I reach the present value of 5895? So I use the equation. The current volume is 3600. The growth rate is 6%. So 1 plus 6% means 1.06. And you found n. From here you will find it to be 8.4 or 8.5 years. So in the 9th year the level of service F was achieved. So if you want to do any adjustments, if you want to avoid level of service F, you have to do it before the 9th year. Now we have this example. We have a new freeway, the volume is given, and the peak hour factor is given, and percentage of trucks are 15%. The ramp density is this much. The section of the highway has level terrain conditions, but it's a very long section. Okay, so within this section we have level terrain, and then we have a 2-mile section of 4% gradient. So we have two different terrain conditions. Now our objective is to have level of service C, but up to level of service D is also allowed. Okay, so how many lanes should be provided to maintain level of service C or D on this section which has these conditions? So the first thing which you will find for this freeway is the free flow speed. And to find the free flow speed we have this equation, and in this equation we have these two adjustment factors and the ramp density. Now since we are designing a new freeway, so I can assume that I will design the lane width and the lateral clearance as per standard. So you can you must have seen in the previous examples when the lane width was 12 feet, there was no adjustment, and when the letter clearance was 6 feet, there was no adjustment. So these are the values which I am taking for this freeway. So the adjustment factors become 0. So you apply the total RAM density only, and you get the free flow speed to be 74.8 miles per hour. Now the nearest free flow speed curve to this one I have is 75 miles per hour, and these are the service flow rates for this free flow speed. Now we wanted to maintain level of service C or D. So my maximum service flow rate should be either this or this. Okay, this one is better, but even this one is acceptable. 2110 is also acceptable. Now I will first of all I will find out the flow rate. Okay, and for finding out the flow rate I need the heavy vehicle adjustment factor as well. So this is the equation for heavy vehicle adjustment factor, and I need PT and ET and PR and ER. There were no recreational vehicles, so this becomes 0. Percentage of trucks was given as 15%. Now there were two terrain conditions. One of them was level terrain. So for level terrain, the equivalency factor for trucks is 1.5. So ET is 1.5, and factor for heavy vehicle adjustment comes out to be this. Then there was a gradient of 4%, and since this gradient can be both upward and downward, if one direction has 4% upward gradient, the other direction will have 4% downward gradient. So I have to consider upward and downward gradients both. So if I consider the downward gradient, then you can see for downward gradient, if it is up to 4%, the equivalency factor is 1.5, okay, which is the same as the equivalency factor for level terrain. So if I put 1.5 in the 1.5 in the equation, I will get the same value, 0.93. Okay, so the heavy vehicle adjustment factor for level terrain and downward gradient is the same, which is 1.5, and the heavy vehicle adjustment factor is 0.93. The equivalency factor is 1.5 and the heavy vehicle adjustment factor is 0.93. Now the number of lanes can be found from this equation for any highway. So I need the design hourly volume, which is given 2700. Peak hour factor was given 0.85. 750 is the maximum service flow rate for level of service D, which is what I want to maintain. Then FHV is just calculated 0.93, and the driver population factor can be taken as 1. So 1.9 lanes are required. So basically 2 lanes are required. For level terrain and downward terrain, 2 lanes are required to maintain level of service C. If I do the same thing for upward gradient now, then this is the equation, and then we have 15% trucks, and we have 4% gradient, which is this range, and the length is 2 miles, so it's in this range. So if you go in this row for 15% trucks, the factor is 2.5. So you put ET as 2.5, and the heavy vehicle adjustment factor comes out to be 0.82. You put it in the equation for number of lanes, and you get number of lanes to be 2.2. Now this is very close to 2, and the previous value I got was also 1.9, which is again close to 2. So let us see what will happen if I take the value, if I take n as 2. Now if you take n as 2 in the level terrain and in the downward terrain, I needed a value of 1.9. So 2 is higher than that, no problem. Okay, but in the upward terrain, in the upward gradient condition, if I take 2.2, then if I take 2, then it is less than the required value of 2.2. So let us see how much will be the service flow rate if I put number of lanes as 2, and then I can compare it with the maximum service flow rate which I want for level of service C or D. So I did it in this equation. So service flow rate is the design volume upon peak hour factor. Number of lanes I have decided as 2. This is the heavy vehicle adjustment factor for upward gradient because I am only checking the upward gradient. The downward and level is fine. Then FP is 1. So service flow rate comes up to be this 1937 passenger cars per hour per lane. If you compare it to the service flow rate for level of service D, it is 1750. So it is more than this. So I am not in level of service C in the upward gradient condition. But am I in level of service D? Yes. Okay, I am still below the maximum service flow rate of D. So I can maintain level of service D on the upward terrain, which is sufficient according to the conditions given in the problem. So in the upward terrain condition, I am maintaining a level of service D, and the downward and level terrain condition, I am maintaining a level of service C, which is satisfying the conditions of the question. So 2 lanes is enough for this case. So this is the example of a multi-lane highway. It's a 4-lane multi-lane highway. It has a median and the volume is given as 2600 vehicles per hour. There are 12% trucks, 2% RVs. It has a 3% gradient which has a length of 1 mile. Peak hour factor is given, and fortunately they have given us the free flow speed directly. So they have measured the free flow speed from some field studies. Okay, so you don't have to calculate free flow speed every time. You can go to the field and you can measure it, which they have done. Now they want to find out the level of service for this facility in the peak hour for which the volume is given. Now since it has a gradient, so you have to again consider the upward downward condition. Let us consider the upward condition. So first of all I need to find out the flow rate. Okay, if the free flow speed was not given, I would have found the free flow speed first, but now I have, my first step would be to find out the flow rate. So in flow rate equation I need the heavy vehicle adjustment factor. So this is the equation for heavy vehicle adjustment factor, and I am considering the upward condition first. So these are the tables for upward conditions. I have a gradient of 3%, which is this one, length of 1 mile, which is this one. So ER, which is 2% in my case. So the percentage of recreation vehicles are 2% in my case. So which will be this column. So ER comes out to be 3, and ET, 3% gradient is here. 1 mile length is this one. The percentage of trucks are 12%, which is between 10 and 15. So you have to interpolate between these two values, but you see at 10 and 15% the values are same, 1.5. So even without interpolation I know it is 1.5. So ET will be 1.5. Then you have the percentage of trucks, percentage of recreation vehicles, ER. Put in the equation, you get FHV to be 0.91. If you put this FHV in the equation for flow rate, so the volume is 2600 given, peak hour factor is 0.88 given, heavy vehicle adjustment factor just calculated 0.91. I have 4 lanes, so 2 lanes in one direction, and this is the factor for driver population. So you get the flow rate to be 1623 passenger cars per hour per lane. If I repeat the same process for downward gradient now, so these are tables for downward gradient. For ET I have this table. So the gradient is 3%, which is here for any length. Okay, so length doesn't matter here, and then my percentage of trucks are 12%, which is between 10 and 15, but again you see the values are same, so I don't have to do any interpolation. If the values were different I would have done interpolation to find out the ET at 12%, but in this case I'll just take it as 1.5. Then for ER, I told you earlier that there is no separate table for ER in downward gradient. So for ER downward gradient, just take the value of ER, which is for level terrain. So ER for any downward gradient is 1.2. So you put ER as 1.2 here. The heavy vehicle adjustment factor is 0.94. You put in the flow rate equation. Everything is the same as previous equation. only the FHP is changing. So your flow rate comes out to be 1572 passenger cars per hour per lane. Now I will put these values in the speed flow curves of multi-lane highways. So these are the curves. My free flow speed was 55. So the curve is this one. I find the two values for my flow rate on the x-axis. They are 1572 and 1623. They are close to each other. I plot them here and then I make a perpendicular towards the curve of 55 miles per hour. So I reach the curve at this point. Now you can see, if you see the diagonal lines, I'm behind the diagonal line for level of service D and I'm ahead of the diagonal line for level of service C. So I'm at level of service D here. So for both my flow rates, for upward condition as well as downward condition, the level of service is D.